begin the discussion, let's take a look at some slides first, and then I will bring Jip and Ismail in here and there to discuss their views. So as mentioned earlier, we're talking about landed homes in Singapore tonight. Just a very quick overview, what's so desirable about landed homes. So looking at Singapore, obviously we know Singapore is very tiny, land scarce. So the landed homes in Singapore are seen as valuable. They are obviously spacious and exclusive. Just to give you a sense of how exclusive this segment is, right? So only 5% of resident households live in landed homes. So that's about 69,000 households out of 1.37 million households in total. In comparison, about 1 million households live in HDB flats. And then if you look at private condos, that's about 220,000. So very exclusive, this landed segment. And with that exclusivity comes a certain sense of prestige. I think as earlier we heard from Jip and also we heard from Ismail about the exclusivity, how it's like a gold mine basically, and a privilege for Singaporeans. Later on we'll touch on that. So looking at the supply, total stock actually available in Singapore, there are only about 73,000 plus landed properties in Singapore as at the second quarter. We'll see how that stack up against the non-landed properties shortly during the presentation later. Looking at landed homes, again, it is also special because not everyone can buy. So you need to be, if you're looking at mainland Singapore, the main island, you need to be a Singaporean citizen. PR, if you are PR for more than 5 years, you can actually write into SLA to make an application for approval. If you don't want to go through all that, and if you're a foreigner or PR, Sentosa Cove is also an option. You don't have to seek permission to buy landed homes in Sentosa, but that's, if I'm not wrong, 99 years tenure. So you have to weigh the difference. So if you're a foreigner, again, what else can you buy? I'm just going to go through very quickly. I know it's there are a lot of points on this slide. Essentially, it just details what foreigners can buy in Singapore without having to seek approval under the Residential Property Act. So we're looking at obviously condos. The third point, strata landed. Later we'll get Jip to talk a little bit more. I will very quickly go through this. This one is on SLA website as well if you are interested to know, or you can ask any of the PropNex agent. So going to the next slide, and this is where probably I will involve our guests a little bit more. Landed home prices, just a very quick recap. In the second quarter, landed home prices, these numbers are from URA. So landed home prices, if you can take a look at that third column there under landed homes, it's flat in Q2 2020 after falling by 0.9% in Q1. So looking at landed homes fell 1% in Q1. Second quarter, inch up slightly, 0.4%. So we're looking at landed homes today. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about landed home prices in the next few minutes. Looking at landed homes, so far, if you take the first half of the year versus the end of last year, prices have come off by 0.9%. And looking at the all-time peak in the third quarter, later on, we'll show you a chart. Landed home prices are now 4.8% below that all-time peak. Ismail and Jip, just want to invite you to come in here on this slide. We have the percentage change in the property price index for landed homes and non-landed homes here. So you can have a look at the last couple of years. Actually, both segments saw positive growth. Ismail, since you're talking about landed property, this year, do you expect a downtrend? I mean, for the first half, we already saw prices going down by 0.9. So how do you think things will hold up for 2020 after that 5.7% increase in 2019?
I think before I even address this year's prediction, I think it would be more interesting to look at the historical price increases that you have showed here, Sui. And I look at it. You see the shocker was in 2010. Can you imagine in a singular year, the landed property prices went up by 30.8% versus the non-landed 14%, more than double. And then it repeated on similarly in 2011 again, while the non-landed 4.6 and landed goes up by 10.3%. Therefore, in other words, just in 2 years, it goes up by 40%, means somebody who buy a property at 3 million and therefore it goes to 4.2 million just in 2 years, a cool cash of $1 million. Yep. And then what happened from 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, we know 2013, one of the reason why landed property started to drop slightly on a higher percentage in comparison to the non-landed is simply because when the total debt servicing ratio was introduced as part of the cooling measures, which literally curtailed people's ability to take a bigger amount of loan. And you know, landed properties were, because of the earlier years, already increased much higher quantum. People were not, the new buyers were not able to secure enough sufficient loan. And that's why there was a little bit of a price adjustment. Therefore, in fact, we look at it, landed property prices are relatively attractive right now because in the years of 14, 15, 16, in fact, 17, the drop was higher than the non-landed segment, and 18, even though it was a positive, but even lower. 19, what happened in 19 here is because 19 was a traction towards the market rebounding back. We saw a record number of transactions, market was positive, and that's where landed property started to pick up its trend, okay, and the demand, and there's also another reason. When the non-landed property prices per square foot started to go up relatively high, then the landed become very attractive in terms of per square foot. So all said, this year, because of the pandemic and as well as the global outlook, I think for the next 6 months, it is going to be relatively flat. As we said, that the prices have gone down for the first half of the year by
0.9.
Yep. I think in all likelihood, it may be probably the next 2 quarters, we may see it increasing by another maybe 1%, and therefore overall it may end up with no movement compared to last year's ending in terms of the price. Yeah.
Jip, maybe let me bring you in here. You know, looking at transactions on the ground or buyers, sellers, are people tending to hold on to their asking prices right now? Are sellers kind of not budging in terms of asking prices?
Okay, I think right now on the ground, based on my own personal experience, I think it's a good time for buyer. If you are looking for landed property, it might be a good chance for you to pick up some good buys. I felt that the seller are more willing to do some negotiation over their price, asking price. Yeah, so there is actually the trend that is happening right now in the ground, and it's already proven and backing up by the good numbers of transactions that are going on, especially after the Q2, right? We are entering into Q3 and July. We have seen quite a healthy transaction going on, right? That is actually the result of the very sensitive asking price, or seller is more willing to negotiate, right? And more buyers are willing to come in to take a look at the house, and they are more serious in buying right now. Yeah, so that's actually what's happening in the ground right now.
And I suppose also earlier when we talked about the limited supply of landed homes, that limited supply component, that's going to help to support prices, isn't it? I mean, it's basic demand and supply theory.
Yeah, I think if I highlight it on this point here is this. You see, a landed home owner who has been living and staying there, he don't have much motivation to sell unless he's trying to downsize or upgrade. If the upgrade means he's going to sell this landed to likely to buy another bigger landed. So the supply side aren't huge, while the demand for especially landed property that are below the $3.5 million mark is relatively huge, because that's a very sweet spot. You see, when we talk about non-landed, we know all Singaporeans, most Singaporeans can afford 1 million to 2 million. And because today we're talking about HDB as $500,000. So 1 million to 2 million is a sweet spot based on all the previous data, so recent transaction. Then for landed, where is the sweet spot? any property that comes below 3 million, it gets snapped up very fast if it is generally in good condition. And Singaporean who are upgraders, anything 3 to 3.5 million is still a good entry level for a lot of people who are looking at decent size of landed properties. Yeah.
Looking at, we'll just move on to look at this price line between landed and non-landed. Technically, they are trending in somewhat similar fashion. I just wanted to point out that actually prices are fairly decently. I mean, if you look at non-landed, they are just 0.9% below the last peak in Q3. And for landed, they are 4.8% below the peak in Q3 2013. So looking at the prices as a whole, things are holding up still. Ismail, I think maybe let's just talk a little bit about landed pricing here. What are some of the other factors that you think could affect the pricing strategy for some of the sellers out there? I mean, obviously, ABSD is a big consideration.
Yeah. But I think especially when people upgrade to a landed, usually they may not be so concerned about ABSD simply because if they are from a condominium, the landed property is likely to be the only property, and therefore this dispose, and therefore they may need not pay the additional stamp duties as long as they time it right. They don't own both at the same time. The ABSD will only kick in for those people who are buying a second property that is a landed. And that sometimes may not make sense, especially if your first property is a smaller quantum value, and then you buy a landed property which is in a bigger quantum and you go and pay an additional stamp duty. So this is where, speaking to any of our PropNex sales people, they really have the knowledge because we have trained them and they have got some tools, we call it as RAMs, okay, and that will be able to show you the figures. But beyond that, one of the things here is this, as you rightly pointed out, Chu Ying, looking at from the peak of the 3Q 2013 for non-landed and landed, actually landed is a better buy now because it is 4.8% lower as comparison to 0.9%. Therefore, you get it 4% cheaper buying the landed today versus if you go back 7 years ago in comparison to the landed, non-landed. But one of the key things I also would like to talk about landed here is this. For landed properties, they tend to hold prices stronger because of, exactly as you say, foreigners cannot buy. So it is in a Singaporean home. And generally, whether the economy is not doing very well, or even for that matter, basically we have lesser number of speculators because foreigners do buy, let's say for example at Orchard Road and Atmore and whatever it is, when the economy is really not well, and if you want to just cash out, he just have to sell or dispose. But in landed, if a Singaporean is staying and that is his roof over his head, he dispose, he must stay somewhere. It is not an investment product as per se for buy and large. But on the other hand, there are people who owns multiple landed properties. So that's where I think landed property tend to strong the price, more stable, less volatile. That's the key word I would like to say. Yeah.
While we're on this topic, I noticed that Henry Tan has a question. I think it's very apt to ask it here. Henry is asking whether condo or landed property is a better investment option for better return. And also, is it leasehold or freehold for better return on investment? So I don't know, maybe since both of you are here with me, I'll put that to you. What do you think?
Jip, you go on this one first, then I give my inputs. But
two questions: condo or landed property for investment, which one is better? And then for freehold or leasehold, in terms of also in terms of returns, what's your sense?
Yeah, I think in my own opinion, right, condo or landed, if you have the means to go for landed property, after you understanding all the important factors that what causes the landed property price to go up, I am very sure you might want to consider landed property, right, in long run. Definitely, you can see from 2010 to 2013, when market are having a bull run, what kind of percentage the landed property are able to appreciate as compared to the counterpart of condominiums, right? So there's something already show lender will be appreciating much faster if every factor are putting together right as compared to condo, right? So in my own opinion, if I have the means, I will definitely want to acquire more landed property. That's my own opinions. Yeah, based on the limited supply of landed property in Singapore, right? And as for the question of 99 years of freehold, yeah, I think that have to be voiced down to what kind of budget that you are talking about if you are coming into the landed market, right? A lot of people are thinking that 99 years are not able to make profits, which I think I will not fully agree, because I have seen many 99 years landed property owners also make profits. It all depends on at which point you buy and where you buy, right? And at which point you exit out from your purchase. Yeah, so that is important if you are going for 99 years landed property. And if you have less than 2 million to spend, for example, right? And I think if you want a decent size of landed property, then you got no choice but have to go down to the 99 years landed property. Yeah, but unless you have a better profit, you have the better spending power, then definitely a 999 years or a freehold might be a good consideration for you, right? So again, just depend on your budget and the objective of buying. Are you going to hold this property for life or not? Because many of the buyers say that I'm going to own a freehold because I want to pass down to the next generation. But again, it never happens. After sometimes along the way, 5 years, 8 years, and a lot of plan change, right? They start to sell away the freehold landed and go for another property and so on. And it really happened now. So really, we must understand where is our objective of buying landed property also. So that's my personal opinions.
Ismail.
Yeah, I think actually, honestly, these two questions, Swing, will take 45 minutes because it's so deep. Because this is thanks to the question that Henry asked. But if I just put broadly, assuming I put an investment angle and assuming his question was asking from an investment perspective, generally speaking, the condominiums, in comparison to, let's say, an inter-terrace or a semi-D, depending again on the size, for the same value, if you put the same $5 million into a condo versus a $5 million or $3 million to a condo versus a $3 million to an inter-terrace, your condo may likely give you a better yield return, rental yield return, because of the lifestyle the condo provides, especially if you intend to buy as an investment and you don't intend to stay there, but you want to rent it out. So condos returns are higher than landed. But on the flip side, the landed on the long term, as what Jip says, is likely to give you a better capital appreciation because of the scarcity of that particular product. So because as you rightfully said, there are 200 over 1,000 condos, 1 million KHDB, and there's only 70 over 1,000 landed. And that's why, what is it one looking at? If somebody who's investing and want the rental return to pay for the mortgage, condo may give a better returns, but long-term capital appreciation. Then the question here is this, the 99 versus freehold. I will not agree or disagree. I think what Jip said is fine, but Jip also did qualify the exit plan. What would be, actually it's not wrong. Do you know you can probably buy a landed property? Jip, I've not searched these. I think there are landed property below $1 million. Have or don't have? Below $1 million.
Yes, but have to be, I think the list maybe balanced about 30 years.
Exactly. That was where I tried to be right. Yeah, you can have, I think in Rifle Range or Budok Sempang, there are a few places where the lease are less than 50 years for sure. I'm not so sure. The 40 plus or 30 plus, I'm really not so sure. And you can buy, you can have the land, you can have everything, but you must realize the end of 30 years or 35 years or 40 years, your $1 million come to zero, but you have a lifestyle of a lender. So do you want to go that route? Unless you are so clear about that, I will not ask you to touch that. If you want to look at some investment returns, then I think it's good to buy a newer, a younger, a fresher 99-year leasehold. It's okay to buy because they're cheaper. But freehold, 999, is really of the gold standard lah. That's the right way to go into a landed property lah. Yeah.
Okay, well, very quickly, thank you, Ismail and Jip, for that. I'm just gonna go to our very next slide on the average price. So we plucked out from Realist the average transacted prices, and we broke it down to the 3 different types of landed property: detached house, which are essentially referring to bungalows and standalone; semi-detached, essentially 2 really similar type of units sharing one party wall; and terrace house, I think URA has classified them under 2 different types, but just for general understanding, we're looking at a row of no less than 3 terrace house together, and they tend to share 2 walls with neighbors. And interestingly, if you're a corner terrace, then you're kind of like a semi-D. So very quickly, if you look at the average prices for the 3 different types, it's quite clear. Terrace house bucking the trend, rising from Q1 to Q2 to 1,400 plus. That's an 8% quarter-on-quarter change. Meanwhile, the other 2, the semi-D and the detached, saw a sharper drop. I think just want to bear in mind also that Q2 transactions are a bit thin, and for landed housing, the transactions are usually lumpy, so things could skew data a little bit. I just want to put that out there. Very quickly, I want to bring again Jip and Ismail in. Detached house, this big drop. Do you expect this to continue, or things could pick up a little bit?
I think I definitely will say totally ignore this slide. Sorry for all that. That you did that, because if you really say landed property dropped 16%, I think a lot of people will jump into it. But you see, that's exactly the point. The overall landed for the entire 2Q was 0. Am I correct? Do I remember right? Did we say
yes,
0?
yes, flat
Yeah.
for overall,
Yeah.
for landed overall.
Yeah, so the overall was 0. But here it shows like a really to the extreme of -16 to +8, and in between detached is sweetly sitting at -8. Yeah, but as exactly pointed out again, Chewing here is the second quarter, because of the circuit breaker and viewing being able to conduct the entire month of May and huge part, it was really so thin. Therefore, even though this is right from Realist, these figures are factual, but these clouded by older landed property in a dilapidated state is being sold, and therefore it pulled down the prices to seem weaker. But in truth of the matter here is this: no owner is really selling it at that low overall if he wants to look at properties. But what is definitely positive from this slide, I will say here, is this terrace houses. Whether got pandemic or no pandemic, terrace houses prices don't seem to slacken. And that's a very simple reason here, is because that is at entry level, the landed price is where huge amount of demand is. And that's why the prices are still holding fairly well for terrace houses.
Jip, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, okay, just to talk a little bit on the detached house, why there is a 16% drop in terms of average per square foot in the Q2. Yeah, I think because there are more detached houses having those big size, giant size, or some of the GCB, they are transacted in Q2, right? And some of the per square foot are below 1,000 because of the huge land size, and the state of the house maybe is already old, like what Ismail has shared, right? So there's actually one reason maybe bring the average per square foot price down for the detached segment. Yeah, and because of this, I think more people, we have seen actually experiences are more detached houses are being transacted in the Q2, and especially in July as well, right? Especially those big size bungalow. They start to surface out, and the transaction are going on, right? And if you talk about percentage increment in terms of the volume, I think detached segment have a huge percentage as even compared to semi-D or terrace houses in July. Yeah.
Right. Actually, landed property also tend to be fairly tightly held, right? They're not so readily available out there for sale.
Yeah, correct, correct. I mean, if there's no reason, then nobody is going to hope to sell it so soon, unless they really make a huge profit. Those people who bought it very long time ago, right? Other than that, they understand one point: the longer they hold, they are able to make much more capital appreciation moving forward, especially the big size bungalows and so on. Yeah, so there's actually the trend for landed property lah.
Right. So the one takeaway, I suppose, terrace house remain a bright spot in the landed segment going forward. The next slide, actually, I want to bring in also Ismail and Jip again to talk a little bit about how the landed property market it's a bit different, right? We spoke about how it's a Singaporean privilege for especially for mainland Singapore. So a lot of people buy for own stay. There's a less speculative type of events and activity, and they are obviously the top tier in the residential market. We've talked about the limited supply and how rare it is. So all these factors taken together will sort of lend some support to the segment, isn't it, Ismail?
No, I think it's beyond doubt. Landed property is definitely, in fact, I also look at it, landed property, even for those people who can afford not only to upgrade or to invest. The base is to be a landed property. I mean, even if you want to speculate and invest in multiple properties, if you can eventually reach and can afford to buy a landed property, that would be in a very ideal, stable spot where you are there to further diversify your second property and third properties. The main reason here is this: speculations are not there. In fact, why I also think the landed property prices, as even Jip says, over time it will just appreciate. You look at it generally, I'm not so sure, maybe there, I can't remember, is there any other slides that you have shown in terms of average per square foot? Today, the landed property average prices per square foot are so much lower than a 99-year leasehold non-landed properties. Yeah. So that being the case, the only stumbling block a lot of people face in entering the landed is the quantum. Yeah. Because of the land size and so on, the property cost more than 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. So the quantum is restricting people. But people are paying so much more for a 99-year leasehold condo where you don't own anything other than the airspace. So you have the legal entitlement to own the 14th floor or the 24th floor and the oxygen that come in freely from your window, but you can't plant anything. But you almost sometimes pay double the price of a landed in terms of per square foot. So putting all these things in perspective, less speculative, it is mostly Singaporean buyers and owners. Therefore, even in a crisis, they don't just dump the properties. And because of the land scarce, we think landed property in the long term will do very well.
Jip, maybe let me ask you, you know how we talked about how generally it's a buyer's market because of the crisis of downturn, keeping prices more realistic, more sensitive. Looking at landed, would you say it's also a similar situation? Would you say that we've actually entered a buyer's market, or because of the limited supply, sellers still actually have hold a bargaining chip? You know, how does the dynamics work in the landed segment?
Okay, I think because of the whole economies and because of the COVID pandemics, right? I think every seller will think that now is not my market, automatically by default in a way lah, right? And they are more willing, if they are genuine sellers, they want to dispose off the property fast. Definitely, they will be more willing to talk or negotiate in terms of the pricing. Yeah. So if you ask me personally, if you enter into the resale market, I think that should be the kind of situation or the mindset that the seller most likely are having as well today. Yeah. But in another angle, if you look at the new launches, for example, those projects that are launched by developer, in fact, the pricing, I will not say we have a lot of movement. It's still like the price is still there like before the COVID coming in. Meaning actually new launches, developers are not willing to really drop the price down a lot, especially some of the project really till end. tier N already, they left only a few units. They are not in a hurry to sell, and they are very positive and confident in the market moving forwards, right? Mainly because of a very limited supply, and you don't see a lot of new launches for landed property, and you don't see government land sales for landed property since 2017. That was the last plot of GLS, government land sales for landed property. After that, we don't see really, and maybe you have to wait for another 5 years, 8 years, or even 10 years before you see a GLS for landed property, right? So it's that kind of rare, very limited supply in terms of the numbers, right? So if those people who are able to hold on, they have the holding power, I'm quite sure they are not willing to sell much lower, if you ask, I mean, in my own opinions. Yeah.